Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards and Nostalgia here, and in today's video I'm going to show off a couple pickups, but also do video responses to the Drew of Vintage Legacy and Stukes baseball cards and Curiosity. And before I do that though, I want to give a shout out to also Decon cards. I don't have any grade 1s to respond to in his video response that he's asking that we show off a grade 1 card. But I still want to shout him out and appreciate what he does on his channel as well. So we'll go ahead and get started now. First card I want to show is this 1951 Bowman rookie of Billy Pierce. I did show off a card of his a couple videos ago. It was a 54 Bowman. I recently added this 51 Bowman rookie as well. It's been on my eBay watch list for a while, and the seller finally dropped the price to what I thought was fair, and I pulled the trigger on it. This is just a beautiful early 50s card. You can see him here finishing a pitch and a pose shot. And then you got nice shadowing there of the stadium behind him. You can see what looks like the seating. And then you got the wall there with the sky peeking out through the openings. Just a beautiful image, I think, and one that I'm happy to have. And I think he's an underappreciated pitcher, as I talked about before in the video ranking the top pitchers of the 1950s. There's the back of the card. I ranked Pierce the 4th best pitcher of the 1950s, and as I said in that video, he's a short, skinny kid. He was a master of off-speed pitches. He could hide the ball well, and he had a really devastating curveball, particularly on left-handed hitters. It was Ted Williams who batted .247 against Pierce, calling him the toughest lefty he ever faced. And there were 3 left-handed hitting batting champions, Billy Goodman, Pete Runnels, and Mickey Vernon, and all 3 hit a combined 196 off Billy Pierce. So as I said in the video, very underrated pitcher, and just a card that I love having in my collection and look forward to displaying it. So now on to the video response for Drew. And Drew's just a good friend of mine in the community, and I just enjoyed getting to know him since he started his channel. I really think he's one of the best storytellers on YouTube. I admire that about him. And he has a fantastic vintage card and memorabilia collection. But what I like most about Drew from a collecting standpoint is that he acquires items that have special meaning to him, and he loves to display them. He just doesn't show off a card quickly. He actually has connections to it and stories, and that's what really brings us together as collectors. So he's having a video response where he wants us to pick 2 Hall of Famers and 1 non-Hall of Famer who has not won a World Series. So my first choice for a Hall of Famer, before I show him, I'll talk a little bit about him. As a hitter, he had a career strikeout percentage of 2.3%. That's only 216 strikeouts and 9,232 at-bats. That's the 3rd lowest strikeout rate in Major League Baseball history. To put it in perspective, Mark Reynolds struck out 223 times in one season in 2009. Now this player was a 15-time All-Star. 6 times in his 19-year career, he finished top 10 in the MVP voting, and he won it in 1959. Now, I'm speaking of Nellie Fox, the Chicago White Sox second baseman. And here he is on his 1952 Bowman. This is his second-year card. 59 Topps card, which is his MVP year. And then one of my favorites is his 1963 Topps. Chose these 3 cards out of my Nellie Fox collection because I like these 3 the best. And they also just signify either moments in his career like the 59 MVP, and then just an early playing days card from 52 Bowman. And then on the 63, I just love the yellow colors, but also you can see the chew on the side of his mouth there, which he was noted for during his playing days. Now, what's interesting about Nellie Fox is he's one of those guys that really had to work his tail off to get into the majors. He was a pretty small guy. As a kid, he was a lousy student, and he just dreamed about playing baseball. And his mom was concerned about him, so she wrote Philadelphia A's owner and manager Connie Mack a letter in 1944 expressing her concern for his future and singing his praises as a baseball player. Now, Mack responded, if her son actually had talent, it was possible to make a living playing baseball. I may one of these days be able to help him. So Fox's parents drove him to the A's spring training, and they secretly hoped that Nelly would flop so he'd be convinced to focus on school. Well, that scrawny kid at 5'6", 130 pounds, who had a hard time even getting a uniform that fit him, he impressed Mr. Mack so much that he offered him a minor league contract, and the rest is history. And at that time, he was only 16 years old. So the most he ever struck out in a season was 18 times in 624 at-bats. That is remarkable in any era. Now, to put it in perspective, the 2022 Angels struck out 25.7% of the time, and the Cleveland Guardians struck out the fewest times at 18.2% in 2022. So you can see strikeout rates have gone up quite a bit. And if you compare that to 1959, the year Fox won the MVP, the Senators led the league in strikeouts at 15.4% of the time, and Nellie Fox in 1959 only struck out 2.1% of the time. Now, Nellie played from 1947 to 1965, and he made the World Series in 1959 with the White Sox, but they lost in 6 games to the Dodgers. Now, my second Hall of Famer was the 9th player to collect 3,000 hits with the same team, where he spent his entire 20-year career. He's one of 2 players to hit 50 doubles and steal 50 bases in the same season. He was also a 7-time All-Star, 1 as a catcher, and 6 as a second baseman. Now I'm speaking of Craig Biggio here. This is his 1989 Topps Tiffany card, which is his first Topps card. And he played in 9 different playoff series, including the 2005 World Series, but he never won a ring. In 40 career playoff games, he hit .234 with 2 home runs and 11 RBIs. Now, my choice for the non-Hall of Famer, who never won a World Series, was, in my view, one of the best 3 pitchers of the 1980s, and maybe the best. Here you have Dave Stieb in his 1980 Topps rookie card, and he's flanked on each side by 2 other Blue Jays that never won a World Series in their careers, and that's George Bell and Jesse Barfield. Now, the Blue Jays won the World Series in 1992, but Stieb was injured and did not play in the playoffs. The team elected to give him a World Series ring, but in my view that doesn't count because he didn't officially pitch in the playoffs or the World Series for that matter, even though he was on the team earlier in that year. Now, Stieb won the second most games in the 80s with 140 behind Jack Morris. He had the highest WAR of any pitcher in the 1980s at 45.2. Now, Jack Morris, who pitched the whole decade as well, is 12th in WAR at 27.9. Stieb pitched from 1979 to 1993, and then he made a short-lived comeback in 1998. In his career, he won 176 games and lost 137. Finished top 10 in the Cy Young voting 4 times. He pitched 5 career one-hitters. 3 times he lost a no-hit bid with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And then he finally pitched a no-hitter, and which is only in Blue Jays history, on September 2nd, 1990. So I think Dave Stieb is a notable player to put in this response to Drew. And somebody I was not a Blue Jays fan growing up, even though they were the closest team to me in proximity, but just never was a fan of theirs. But it's a team that I do respect and brings back great memories seeing these 3 players together, especially when I see that number 29 there on the back of Barfield's uniform. I remember those uniforms so well and the way they did the numbering on those jerseys. My second video response today, I want to do it for Stukes Baseball Cards and Curiosities. And he wanted us to show off local sports heroes. And I enjoy watching Stukes' channel as well. He's another YouTuber who has just a deep knowledge of cards and memorabilia. He has a lot of items you don't see every day. And I think, what I like about him as well is he has a wonderful collection of 1947 to 1966 exhibit baseball cards. So the player I chose to show off is Sal the Barber Magley, and here you can see his 1955 Bowman and 1959 Topps, and these are cards from my childhood collection that I had because I knew Magley grew up in Niagara Falls, New York, which is where I grew up, And between 1950 and 1956, Magley was really among the most feared hurlers in baseball, according to Saber. He was 6 foot 2 inches, 180-pound right-hander whose game day face bristled with thick black stubble. He looked capable of killing the opposing batters, and his pitching style confirmed the fears his appearance aroused. His high hard one came in so close to batters' heads that it seemed to shave their chins, gaining him the memorable nickname Sal the Barber. Now, although best remembered for his on-field ferocity, Magley didn't come by his reputation naturally. Off the field, he was a gentle, courteous, good-natured man. Now, when I was a teenager, my best friend's mom was a nurse at Memorial Hospital, which is where I was born, and Sal Magley would go in there from time to time with health issues, and he was staying at the nursing home, which was a Memorial Hospital nursing home in the late 1980s after suffering a stroke. And she would care for him, and she said that he was just, as Saber said, a very nice, pleasant, genuine person to be around. And he was really in poor health at that time, but he still maintained good spirits. And he ended up passing away in 1992 at the nursing home. So I just wanted to pay tribute to Sal the Barber today, and also appreciate the channel's Decon Cards, the Drew, A Vintage Legacy, and Stukes Baseball Cards and Curiosities. Everybody have a great weekend.